We're going to be working on our embroidery abstract landscapes. Somehow what you create is going to look like a place. It might look a little bit more realistic, but it'll emphasize colors and shapes. The shapes stacked on each other end up telling our mind that these are landscapes, even when we're using the brightest of colors and focusing on textures and shapes to move our eye around. You might be thinking of a place that you really love, and then you need to try and transform it into some basic shapes. Here I did this with Multnomah Falls. So something you paint might look as simple as this, or this. I left some space between the colors because this will help them keep separate when we paint our fabric. Number 1, go ahead and separate out the plain circle, put it under your fabric, kind of in the middle. So the plain hoop is under your piece of fabric. You're going to want to stretch this tightly so that we can embroider it. So I'm holding the fabric with my hands while also scooting the larger hoop down over top. And then I can tighten my little screw so that that outer ring is tight on the inner ring. If you need to do a few small tugs to make it even more tight, but not too tight, of course, you may. With a piece of masking tape, I will be able to put my name on this without damaging the fabric. So tear yourself a piece of masking tape and get a Sharpie and try and put that masking tape someplace it won't get in the way, like a corner. Put your name and your class code on your tape. Make sure it really sticks. Then you're ready to paint. I recommend starting in the foreground or with the bottom shape of color. And then watch how I kind of judge how little or how much water to use based on what my brush is doing. We want to put as much pigment in as little water as possible, but we do need to use that water to get the pigment to penetrate the fabric. So I'm getting my brush a little bit wet, adding the pigment, tapping it into the fabric, and then adding a little bit more water if needed. We want your shapes to kind of have a solid outline. So that means that you might need to go over your patch of color a few times to give it that nice, thick, solid outline. There are definitely some ways you could do this where you have a scratchy or a wispy line, but for the most part, our eyes would love to see some big, strong patches of color with our stitching over top or in between. This is definitely sped up. This process could take the entire class period or longer because you want to work that paint into the fabric, and you don't want to shortchange this part of the design. It's a very strong part of the design. Make sure you clean your brush in between colors. And when you're finished, you'll have a very wet piece of fabric that we will put on the drying rack. Next time, we'll be adding some stitches for detail.